Tonight, we'll take a slow, gentle journey back in time to a place often called the cradle of civilization, a land between two rivers where the sun warmed wide fields of grain and where people, thousands of years ago, began the long, slow story of cities, writing, and shared human life. We are going to ancient Mesopotamia, a soft, faraway place in history where the days moved slowly and where the sounds of reeds, flowing water, and the quiet steps of farmers filled the air. You don't need to remember dates or names or wars. Just let the story drift over you like a warm, steady breeze. And as we walk through these ancient lands together, you might just find yourself falling asleep. Long ago, in a time before written records, the land we call Mesopotamia was already shaped by the slow, patient flow of two great rivers, the Tigris and the Euphrates. They wound their way through a region of fertile soil, bordered by stretches of dry plain and distant hills. Each year, when the snow melted far to the north, the rivers would rise, bringing fresh silt to the fields, a soft, dark earth that could grow barley, wheat, lentils, and dates. People began to settle here, not all at once, but gradually, as generations passed. They built small villages of mud brick houses, each brick shaped by hand and dried in the hot sun. The walls were thick, keeping out the heat of the afternoon, and inside, the rooms were cool, with woven reed mats on the floor and clay jars storing grain. Chickens scratched in the dust outside, goats grazed at the edges of the fields, and in the distance, shepherds watched their flocks as the light shifted into a coppery evening glow. Life moved slowly. Mornings began with the call of birds over the reeds. People would rise early to tend to the fields before the heat grew strong. Men and women worked side by side, using simple wooden plows pulled by oxen, cutting irrigation channels to guide the river water. In the shade, older villagers told stories to the children, tales about how the rivers were gifts from the gods and how the stars were placed in the sky to watch over them. The air smelled faintly of baked bread and wet clay, and at night, the sky stretched wide and dark, glittering with more stars than most of us will ever see. These early settlements were small, but each had its rhythm, its own pattern of planting and harvest, of festivals and rest days. People traded fish from the rivers, baskets woven from reeds, and beads carved from shells. The rivers connected them, not just as a source of water, but as the paths along which news and goods could travel. Over time, some villages began to grow larger. Simple huts gave way to small temples, built on raised platforms to keep them safe from floods. Priests tended to the temples, offering grain, oil, and incense to the gods. These priests were not rulers yet, but they kept the calendar, watched the movements of the stars, and told people when to plant, when to harvest, and when to celebrate. The Mesopotamians did not see their world as divided between the sacred and the ordinary. The gods were present in the rivers, in the storms, in the tall, swaying reeds, and in the hum of insects at dusk. And so, life flowed, season after season, year after year, quietly building the foundations of what would become the first cities. As the centuries passed, the small settlements grew into towns, and some of these towns became the world's first cities. Uruk, Eridu, Lagash, names that were whispered from traveler to traveler, carried on riverboats and in market stalls. In Uruk, the streets were narrow, winding between walls of sun-baked brick. Merchants called out from their stalls, offering fragrant spices, wool, copper tools, and painted pottery. The air was filled with the soft murmur of haggling voices, the clink of scales weighing grain, and the faint ringing of bronze. Water carriers moved slowly through the crowd, their jars balanced on wooden frames. The heart of the city was the ziggurat, a great stepped platform rising above the rooftops, crowned by a temple dedicated to the city's patron god. From a distance, it looked like a mountain of clay and stone, catching the golden light of the setting sun. Priests climbed its steps each day to make offerings and to watch the horizon for signs in the clouds and stars. In the neighborhoods, life unfolded in simple, familiar ways. Families baked flatbread in clay ovens. Potters shaped vessels on slow-turning wheels. Children played games with pebbles, their laughter echoing through the alleys. Scribes, trained for years to master the art of writing, sat cross-legged with clay tablets, pressing wedge-shaped marks into the damp surface, recording trade agreements, temple inventories, and sometimes the oldest poems we know. The people of Mesopotamia believed that writing itself was a gift from the gods, a way to keep the world in order. In the fields beyond the city, farmers tended barley and date palms, their irrigation canals spreading like silver threads across the plain. Each season brought its own work and its own festivals. At the new year, people gathered to watch processions through the streets, with musicians playing lyres and flutes, and with offerings carried to the temple. At night, oil lamps flickered in every doorway, casting soft pools of light on the streets, while the scent of cooking and incense drifted on the air. Even in the bustling cities, there were quiet moments. A merchant pausing to drink cool water in the shade, a potter smoothing the surface of a vase, a child watching the sky grow dark from the city wall. These were the rhythms that kept life steady, even as rulers rose and fell, and even as the cities grew larger and more complex. In time, the people of Mesopotamia left behind more than bricks and pottery. They left us stories. Around the hearth, under the open night sky, tales were told of Gilgamesh, the king who searched for the secret of immortality. In the quiet of the temples, scholars copied lists of stars, medical recipes, and proverbs. The wisdom they passed down was often simple, yet deep. To care for the fields, to keep one's word, to show respect to the gods and to one's neighbors. Education was reserved for the few who could train as scribes, but stories were for everyone, passed from grandparents to grandchildren, from boatmen to farmers, from market sellers to shepherds in the fields. The rivers kept flowing, sometimes gently, sometimes in floods, and the people adapted, building higher levees, deeper canals, and better tools. Over hundreds of years, kingdoms rose and faded. The Sumerians, the Akkadians, the Babylonians, the Assyrians. But daily life for most people changed slowly. The feel of clay in the hand, the smell of freshly baked bread, the cool shade of a reed mat on a hot afternoon, these would have been as familiar to a farmer in 2000 BCE as they were to his ancestors 1,000 years before. Even the great cities had their quiet hours, when the markets were closed, the streets empty, and the air still. In those moments, the ziggurats stood silent against the starlit sky, and the only sounds were the soft lapping of river water and the distant call of night birds. Eventually, the great powers of Mesopotamia would be conquered by empires from beyond its borders, and the old cities would crumble. But their memory would linger, not only in ruins and artifacts, but in the very ways we live, in our calendars, in our writing, in our laws, in the simple act of farming fields watered by canals. And so, as you drift now toward sleep, imagine the slow turning of the Mesopotamian seasons, the gentle green of new shoots in spring, the golden shimmer of ripe barley in summer, the quiet cool of autumn evenings, and the stillness of winter nights beside the hearth. Time moves forward, But here, in the cradle of civilization, the story moves gently, endlessly, like the rivers themselves. Let that thought carry you slowly into rest.